Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into the key global trends set to shape 2025, a year that our source material is calling the Great Recalibration. To really get a handle on the year ahead, you've got to understand this core concept, superposition. Now, I know, it sounds like something out of a physics class, right? But here, it perfectly captures the profound uncertainty we're all facing, a world where radically different outcomes all seem possible at the same time.
So how do you even wrap your head around that? Well, the source offers up this brilliant analogy that we're going to come back to. Picture this. You're trying to ride two camels at once. One represents the world we know, the old, familiar, rules-based order. The other? That's the new world, unpredictable, transactional, and a little bit chaotic. It's going to be a tricky ride, to say the least.
So, how is this radical uncertainty actually playing out? We'll break it down into 5 key areas: geopolitical friction, AI's big reality check, new economic walls and pivots, the unstoppable green boom, and we'll wrap it all up by revisiting what it means to be riding those two camels.
Okay, let's dive right into our first area, the tense state of global geopolitics, where it feels like alliances are shifting under our feet and peace seems incredibly fragile.
Now, according to our source, a major driver of all this uncertainty is a potential shift in U.S. foreign policy. An America First agenda could really challenge those traditional alliances, forcing partners to navigate a much more transactional, what's in it for me kind of relationship with the United States.
And this is all happening at the exact moment that a group the source calls the Quartet of Chaos is tightening its pact. We're talking about 4 nations, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, who seem to be coordinating their efforts more and more, creating a unified challenge to the existing global order.
You can see these tensions boiling over in 3 really critical regions. In Ukraine, it's become a brutal war of exhaustion, which is creating immense pressure for some kind of negotiated settlement. In the Middle East, a fragile ceasefire might hold, but those nuclear tensions with Iran are still simmering right below the surface. And over in the South China Sea, there's increased pushback against Chinese aggression, and that's really starting to shift the dynamics of that long-running dispute.
All right, let's switch gears to technology and see how this uncertainty is creating a major reality check for artificial intelligence. The source actually calls it a trillion-dollar gamble, and you'll see why.
On the one hand, the investment is just absolutely staggering. Over $1 trillion is being funneled into building out the massive data centers needed to power this AI revolution. So the belief in its potential is clearly there.
But on the other hand, there's a huge disconnect. This analysis shows that only about 5% of firms in the US are actually using AI in their products and services. That's a massive gap between all the hype and the reality of who's actually putting it to work.
And what's really fascinating here is that the industry is starting to run into some very real physical limits. A new bottleneck is popping up, and it's energy. The power required for all these data centers is so immense that consumption could literally double by 2026, posing a huge challenge to just how fast the AI boom can continue.
This whole theme of recalibration continues when we look at the global economy. Here, the uncertainty is being driven by 2 powerful forces: rising protectionism and these huge demographic shifts that are simply unavoidable.
And a huge factor here is the potential for sweeping new tariffs. The analysis points to the possibility of levies as high as 60% on Chinese goods, a move that would dramatically reshape global supply chains as we know them.
But in response, we're already seeing some pretty smart adaptation. Chinese firms aren't just sitting around. They're finding ways around these economic walls by moving production to countries like Mexico and Hungary, and by doing that, they can effectively bypass the new tariffs.
Meanwhile, 2 of the world's biggest economies are facing their own demographic destinies, but they're tackling them in very different ways. In Japan, the baby boomer generation hitting age 75 is putting immense strain on their social systems. China, on the other hand, facing its own shrinking population, is trying to pivot and create a lucrative silver economy that caters to its aging citizens.
So, with all this political and economic uncertainty, you might be wondering, what about the green transition? Well, despite all the headwinds, the source says the momentum here appears to be pretty much unstoppable.
The data shows a world that's definitely in transition. Renewables are growing fast, and they're expected to make up about 17% of the global energy mix. But it's also clear that fossil fuels still dominate the landscape, supplying over 80% of our total energy. It's a transition, not an overnight switch. But that momentum is undeniable, and a key technology that enables this whole shift is set to just explode. Grid-scale energy storage, think massive batteries, is projected to be the fastest-growing energy technology in 2025. This is a game changer because it helps solve the intermittency problem of renewables, and it's exactly what's needed to power all those energy-hungry data centers we were talking about.
Okay, let's move to our final section and see how this all ties together, which brings us right back to our central challenge for the year.
And here we are, back with our two camels. This metaphor just perfectly sums up the challenge for leaders and businesses in 2025. It's about trying to balance the old rules of engagement with a new, uncertain, and highly transactional reality, all while the ground is shifting right under your feet.
So, when you pull it all together, from geopolitics to technology to the economy, every sector is navigating the state of superposition. Alliances are being redefined, the AI boom is hitting physical limits, protectionism is forcing new strategies, and the green transition just keeps powering on. The only certainty, it seems, is radical uncertainty itself.
This leaves us with a final provocative question to think about as we all try to navigate the year ahead. In a world defined by superposition, where all these different futures are possible at once, what's the greater risk? Making a bold move that could be wrong, or staying put and getting left behind? Something to ponder long after this explainer is over.